So let's play a little game. Raise your hands if you love witchy things. Raise your hands if you love a strong female lead character in a book. Also raise your hands if you always wanted a raven as your familiar. Definitely, I always wanted a raven as my familiar. Also raise your hands if you always dreamed about living in a cottage in the woods or in nature. And raise your hands if you love nature and its inhabitants and insects. Okay, maybe insects are debatable, but we all love nature, don't we? So if you answered at least 2 or 3 questions with yes, then I have the perfect book recommendation for you, and it is Weyward by Emilia Hart. This is just such a magical, enchanted book, and I highly recommend it. And yeah, let's talk about why. But first of all, hi and welcome or welcome back. My name is Bibi and today we are doing our very first book review on the channel. I'm really excited. And by the way, if you like witchcraft, if you like thrifting and vintage and also books, then don't forget to do the YouTube magic and subscribe to my channel. Also like this video if you enjoyed and leave a comment down below. And yeah, let's talk about Weyward. And by the way, if I'm looking down, I'm looking at my notes because I wrote down I think 6 or 7 pages, so we have a lot to talk about. But as I said, I just finished the book Weyward, and let me tell you that Emilia Hart did an amazing job writing that book. It was one of these books that I could not put down, and I read like I think all of the 400-ish pages in 3 days. So that is pretty fast considering that I only read in the evenings, and by that point I'm already pretty exhausted. But let me tell you, I could not put that book down. I wanted to know what's happening, and I will explain in a minute how the book is structured so you understand why I could not put it down. But yeah, honestly, I just found that book in like my local bookstore. I did not think about it a lot. I just grabbed it because I was so intrigued by the cover. It looked beautiful, and I then read the back of the book and I was like, I need to read that. That sounds magical, that sounds so enchanted. And that's how Weyward and I basically met in the bookstore, like the classical way. But yeah, this is something that I wanted to talk about because actually this happened to me a few times, that a book just felt right. I didn't know anything about it. I have never heard of that book. I didn't research it. There was no current hype about that book. And honestly, I feel like this is when a book is perfect for you. When you go into a bookstore and a book just feels right, even though you don't know why, just grab it. This is like your intuition telling you like this is something you need to read. And it happened to me multiple times that I like bought a book that was hyped or was getting hyped, and I read it and I was like, I cannot get into that book. Like I could not connect to the book no matter how hard I tried, or it was even like I was disappointed even at some of the books that were hyped, and I did not understand at all why, but that's whole another chapter. But yeah, just wanted to say, if a book feels right for you, you don't know why, just grab it. Like just take it and see what happens. And I promise these are like the books that are most meaningful to you, that stuck with you the longest. And this is what happened with Weyward to me. So long story short, if a book is calling out to you, then just listen what it has to tell you. In Weyward, we follow the stories of 3 young women that live in different times, centuries even, but all of these stories are somehow connected. And it is the story of Arthur, of Violet, and Kate's story. And let's start with Arthur's story. So Arthur is this 21-year-old girl, and the book starts with a scene where she sits in her cell and she's like waiting for her trial because she is accused of being a witch. And as you probably know, the 17th century is no century that you want to be accused of being a witch. So throughout the book we learn about Arthur and her history, like her childhood, also her then best friend Grace. And to Arthur, Grace still is her best friend. She even is like her sister. But something happened, and after that, basically they didn't talk anymore. But Altha still thinks a lot about Grace. Like, we learn that she misses her a lot. Like, she misses the childhood basically with Grace, and she thinks about how carefree everything was. And I feel like we all can relate with that, right? In our childhood, we don't even have to worry about anything. Like, in usual cases, we don't have to worry. We can just enjoy life. And that's how it is for Altha. She is like really stuck in the past, I would even say, because she thinks so much about Grace. Like, the description of how she thinks about laying with her in the grass and like smelling her hair, just this like smell is stuck in her head because it reminds her of childhood. And I once read that like smells are the one thing that keep you in the past, or like you can connect a memory to it the best. It's not like the music or something, it's like smells that when you smell it, it's like you are catapulted in like into the past, like to a moment in your past. And this is basically what Altha is experiencing. And yeah, as I said, they are not in contact, but throughout the book we learn what happened to both of them. We also learn about Altha and her mother and the challenges that they face, like growing up for Altha in the Century, and like for her mother being in the Century with her daughter while being the healers of the village. And like when we read the story, Altha is living alone in the cottage and her mother is no longer there with her. But after something happened in like the past, her mother was like, okay, you have to promise me that you will not show your powers. You like have to hide your powers. You can never talk about it, never show it. And Altha had to promise it to her mother that she's kind of hiding herself. And yeah, then we basically follow along the process. We learn why Altha is being accused of being a witch. We also get more of her past while reading when it is relevant to like what is happening in the process. We learn more about Altha's past, about her history and what happened. And we also hear the sides of the witnesses, like the people who accuse Altha of being a witch. And honestly, this was a little bit hard to read for me, not because it was written bad, but because I was like reading it and I felt so bad. I think Emilia did such a good job to like really feel with the characters, and I anyway cannot stand when I can feel something is not true and then like someone is trying to harm another person. But I'm also one of these people that kind of skip a movie and I would like fast forward 30 to 60 minutes so I don't have to watch something that is like not fair to a person. And I know it's not fair because you can obviously tell the person is experiencing something that they like don't deserve. So I also most of the time read the last page of a book because I just want to know that there is a happy end. Otherwise I cannot stand it. Yeah, this is Altha's part of this book. We learn a lot about her. We learn her strength. She gave me a little bit high priestess vibes, like all this herbal knowledge that she received from her mother, like this ancient wisdom that she had to heal people, right? We also follow the story of Violet, and Violet's story begins in 1942, and I think she is 16 or 17 at that point, so she's a pretty young girl. And she lives with her father, with her brother Graham, and the servants in a huge mansion called the Orton Hall Estate. Yeah, her story takes place in a time, I think you know what happened, so it's not easy for her anyways during that time. But she has never seen anything else as well. Like, she's not allowed to go outside to like study, but her brother is. So she would always like go and steal his books because she has this thirst of knowledge. She wants to like experience the world and read and study. So she grabs the books of her brother to kind of get this knowledge. And all in all, Violet really doesn't have it easy because her father is extremely cold towards her and he generally doesn't really give her much of attention. All of the attention is on her brother, like all the effort. You know, he is allowed to go to school, like he's allowed to basically do what he wants, but she is like always this kind of person that is not allowed to do what she wants. Violet's mother is not there anymore, and no matter how hard Violet tries to find out anything about her, no one will answer her questions. Like her father will act even more colder towards her if she asks about her mother. The servants will just change the topic. Basically, no one will answer the questions or just avoid to speak about the topic when she tries to bring it up. So at some point, she just assumes that her mother kind of didn't make it through the birth of her brother Graham. That's like the story that she believes at this point because no one tells her anything. So how can she find out the truth, right? And this is like a big part of Violet's story, finding out what happened to her mother and why everyone was like acting so coldly. Like she's wondering, was my mother kind of crazy, or was she kind of making some problems, or what happened, right? She wants to know what happened. And the only thing that Violet has from her mother is a necklace, like a medallion of some kind, and that is all she has. Like other than that, she does not know anything because no one will talk about it. Her father also is kind of justifying the way he acts by saying that he wants to prevent her from turning out like her mother did, and this is like even more strange to Violet because this is giving more weight to the idea that her mother was maybe mentally ill, right? Like why are they talking like that? Like what happened? And something happened in like the childhood of Violet and Graham to Graham that Violet kind of did, not in like a mean way or because she meant it, but it just happened. And from that day on, her father was like, okay, I'm preventing that you turn out like your mother, like stop what you're doing. I don't know what it is, but stop it. So this is kind of what her father and like her situation is. But Violet is like this really talented young girl that is just thirsty for knowledge. She wants to learn about the world. She wants to travel around and study the insects. She has this huge thirst of knowledge, and I could relate so much with that. Like I was the same. I also wanted to be a biologist and just like study the insects, study the plants. I always had these little containers that had like these glasses that increased a picture. I forgot what it is called again, and I would like have little insects inside and study them and then like carefully put them out again, right? So I could relate so much to Violet, and we follow her story. But at some point her father comes to her and he says, your cousin is coming, stop what you're doing, act normal. And he threatens her. So I think it was that he said she's not allowed to go outside anymore. Basically, from that point on, Violet tried to lock herself up in the room. She cut herself off from nature, and that's when she's turning lethargic. And this is basically like such a huge burden on her. Like she wants to go outside, but she kind of forces herself to stay inside. So it's basically like being locked inside, like again, this little bird in the cage that is just locked up and not allowed to fly. And then there is also Kate's story. And Kate's story takes place in 2019. Kate is in a relationship that is anything but loving, and she is controlled, manipulated even by her boyfriend Simon. And they met, I think it was four or five, maybe even 7 years ago, and they have been together since then. And to Kate it started out like love, but she realized soon that it was not love at all. As I said, he was controlling, manipulating her. Then she inherits the cottage by her great aunt, and she knows that she has to get out of the situation. She has to do something. And after a long planning, after like carefully thinking about how she can get out of this apartment that they live together in, she makes it. She takes the jump into the unknown, and moves to her aunt's cottage. And honestly, I was really heartbroken because we follow along her and she's so insecure. She even like doing the tiniest tasks, like going to the grocery store, she feels like so insecure. She's like not confident, she's afraid, anxious even. And yeah, we follow her as she like kind of regains her strength because something happened, which is taking a huge part in Kate's life. I'm not going to spoiler that, but this changes everything. So we basically follow her story as she moves from the apartment out of the controlling relationship with her boyfriend Simon to the cottage, where she kind of even finds a friend and just finds her way back into life. And that was just beautiful to read. So all three women have in common that they have this strong bond with nature. They all have this really strong connection with nature, with its inhabitants, with ravens, with insects. And yeah, they can hear the nature and its inhabitants in their own unique way. So here's my little review. Now we have the story, you have a little picture of what is happening in the book. I really enjoyed, as I already said, that the book was written in 3 perspectives. We follow the story of author Violet and Kate, but in a way where it never gets confusing. Like, you can always follow the story seamlessly. All is like woven together seamlessly, and it's just like you want to know what's happening. When you read the story of one woman and then it's like, okay, now it's Violet's story, you cannot stop reading because you just want to know what's happening and how all of these 3 women are kind of connected with each other, and yeah, what they are dealing with, how they kind of get out of the situations they are in, and how they grow, basically. I already said it, but Emilia's writing is absolutely beautiful. She did such a great job. Her writing is so vivid and magical and enchanted, and I don't know how she made it, but it's like she has woven magic into her writing. So I don't know, it's just such a beautiful book. It's hard to explain in words. It's just like the feeling that you get, and I feel like a book that is giving you a feeling that you carry on for a long time is a good book. And I also want to give a little disclaimer, because I know the way I described this book, it sounds really magical and enchanted, which, don't get me wrong, it is, but the book is also dealing with some heavier themes. So just keep that in mind in case you are easily triggered or you are sensitive, that these 3 women, they also experience some pretty heavy stuff in their life. So yeah, just keep that in mind in case you are sensitive to these kind of things. But what I like about the book is that even though they experienced these situations, they never gave up. Violet at some point nearly did, but they just remembered that they have these immense powers running through their blood. And yeah, at some point all of them remembered how strong they really are. And honestly, Emilia did an amazing job kind of putting all of these 3 women through their own individual transformation journey. They all take their individual time they need, however long it may take, and they all come to a point where they realize that they are strong and powerful, and they have kind of this power running through them. So I really enjoyed it. Again, it was not like these fast transformations that you don't get. It was like for all of these 3 women in the perfect setup and timing, I would say. Author Violet and Kate, all of them have their own individual empower moment, so I really enjoyed that. While I was reading Weyward, I myself was reminded how I kind of forgot my witch, my inner witch, and yeah, how I tried to ignore that integral part of myself while I was trying to fit in to expectations of everyone else, and how I tried to cut myself off from what I appreciated, like from my passions, just to make other people happy, right? And I feel like that's what happened to Violet as well. That's why I could relate so much to this feeling when she was locked in her room, or she locked herself into the room and she tried not to listen to nature, and at some point she just couldn't hear it anymore, and yeah, basically she went crazy. She went depressive because she could not take it anymore. Like, the one thing that meant everything to her was kind of taken from her, and she totally shut herself off. So that was a big aha moment, and I, as I said, was reminded how I forgot that I tried to ignore my inner witch as well. So I feel like Weyward can remind you of that you as well have like your individual magic, your superpower, and if you have suppressed it for whatever reason, because maybe you felt insecure, maybe you tried to fit in expectations, it can help you kind of remember that part of yourself. So I don't know, that's just what it did for me. So if you are looking for a good book to read in your fairy cottage, or under an oak tree, or in your garden, on your balcony, then definitely give Weyward a try. And I personally can say that Weyward is already on my top 2024 book list, and I think it will stay there for a very long time because it was one of the best books that I have read in a few years. So again, if you have read it, let me know in the comments how you liked it. And if you have not read it, then let me know if after this review you want to read it and why. And we will see each other again next week. So let's hang out again then. Bye bye!